Welcome to Stumble Upon. I'm Austin.
And I'm Emily. Today we are discussing Death Walks on High Heels, directed by Luciano Ercoli.
As always, there'll be plenty of fucking spoilers.
But if that doesn't scare you, the Blue-Eyed Man should. So grab your passport, book a flight to London, and be sure to pack a switchblade.
This episode brought to you by Citywide, now streaming on Amazon.
Rent or purchase tonight. Host a movie night. Invite all your friends over and know that every dollar spent on supporting indie filmmakers like us helps us make the next sapphic indie.
Death Walks on High Heels is a film where a French stripper is harassed by a man who wants a cache of diamonds stolen by her late father. She flees to England in the company of a doctor, but danger follows. This synopsis brought to you by IMDb. It does a good job of like...
It's actually not a bad one for IMDb.
No, it's not. But it only gives you, honestly, and we'll touch on this, it only gives you about the first 45 minutes of the film.
That's what's cool about it.
Yeah. So for this episode, we're talking about giallo films, which is an Italian subgenre of horrors. The giallo, the word relates to, or means yellow in Italian, and it relates to these old yellow paperbacks, these murder mysteries that were easy and cheap to find and were readily available for everybody. And so this type of cinema, the giallo film, is more or less just murder mysteries. There are a ton of different kind of brackets from there. Like there's the Dario Argento subgenres of giallos, which are more supernatural. There's the film we're talking about today, Death Walks on High Heels, which was written by this incredible writer, Ernesto Gestaldi, who believed in more kind of structured giallos, these very concise and well-crafted mysteries. You have slasher elements in it. You have psychological horror. There's a lot of sexploitation. There's a whole bunch of different kind of elements that work in that come to play in giallos. So like I kind of came across giallos. I came across this old podcast called Daughters of Darkness with Sam Deegan and Kat Ellinger, and they were talking about art giallos and all these other really obscure to me at the time films, and they piqued my interest by talking about some Edwidge Fenech and Sergio Martino films like The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward and All the Colors of the Dark, the incredibly named Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, which is a wonderful fucking film. And I think that that's about the time that I started introducing you to the giallos as well.
That is correct.
What of the genre kind of speaks to you? Like even if we're not talking specifically about the film we're talking about today, but in just overall.
I think what I really enjoy about the giallo genre is a mixture of it consistently having a female or multiple female leads who are often queer, or at least queer leaning, and on top of it, shot in beautiful locations. I know that there's sort of a travelogue many times. Giallo films were funded by different countries' film departments, and so that it enabled, or film commissions, so it enabled them to actually make the film, these Italian films, in different places. So you go to the Spanish Riviera, you go to London, you go to Paris, you go to all these different places that are very beautiful and fun to film in because they're supported by that country. And I think that's something that really speaks to me because as a daughter of diplomats, I grew up overseas and I really enjoy going back to the places I used to live and visit them, even though it was before I was there. So it's an even earlier time than I was there, but it is really fun to see these places again or see places I haven't seen before.
Yeah, and I relate to that as well because like I was very sequestered out in the Pacific Northwest as a child, but like seeing all these places that I heard about and seeing them with some of the most beautiful people in some of the most beautiful locales and being able to, as you said, kind of use this as a travelogue to see incredible mysteries in really fun places with people that you could aspire to kind of be, even if you don't want to be as devious or deviant as they are.
Speak for yourself.
Oh, that's fair. But like it's a really fun kind of subgenre because it allows for all these different ways to play and ways to engage your mind. Like not just like, even if you solve the crime fast in some of these films, it's not really that they're not really trying to hide it very well. You still get these locations and you still get all this beautiful scenery to digest.
Yeah, and you're right in pulling it up that it's a referencing that they're murder mysteries more often than not. Are they all exclusively murder mysteries?
Yes.
Okay, that's great because those are fun. Everybody enjoys murder mystery. I mean, Agatha Christie hit on it.
Yeah.
And I think that is why they're so digestible, because it's a formula we all know and really enjoy because there's a resolution.
Yeah.
There's always a resolution. And sometimes in cinema or in art in general, you just need the comfort of a resolution to know that there'll be something at the end that you all will agree upon. And as you referenced before, the writer of Death Walks on High Heels, he said that he enjoys making sure his mysteries are solvable and realistic, and that all the clues are there so that upon second, third, fourth watching, you can start to see little trail breadcrumbs that he would leave for you.
His comment is really Altman-esque in its desire to have multiple viewings, because these films do, even I've seen a lot of reviews of Death Walks on High Heels, and a bunch of them are really negative about it and seem to denigrate it for some of the things that I think it does really well. But what I find is that there is always something more to view. There's always something more the second time you watch it, there's an experience to be had, an understanding of what the character actually wants. I think Gastaldi did a great job of writing characters who had desires that you could easily believe one thing for the first time you're watching it through, and then see a different side of them the second time you watch it.
What I think is nice about this film, I agree with you. I saw a lot of comments, reviews, blog posts on Death Walks on High Heels, and it was quite negative. And I think actually what a lot of these people are missing is this is a great intro to giallo, because it is silly and it is easily digestible and it is super fun and it is beautiful and it is sexy. And there's an opportunity, if you aren't familiar with this genre, to jump in with this one and you'll get a taste of what's to come. I think later ones are much more bloody, much more gruesome. But this one is not so much. There isn't that much murder. And therefore, that's why people dislike it, who are big fans of the genre. And I think they're missing the point of that. I think that there's value in having variety within the genre, not everyone having the same amount of blood.
Yeah.
No matter what Blumhouse says.
Yeah. I think also that there were 3 films that this filmmaker, Luciano Ercoli, made, and he made them with the lead, Nieves Navarro, and she was credited in this film as Susan Scott, because a lot of people at this time wanted to make more Americanized names so that they could translate the market. And he made these films with her, and they were all written by Gastaldi. The Forbidden Photos of a Woman Above Suspicion, Death Walks on High Heels, and Death Walks at Midnight. And all 3 of them are more focused on the internal life of the lead female characters than they are necessarily on just the slasher or murder mystery elements. Those elements come in and they apply and they matter to the story. But I think that the 3 of them were really very interested in kind of exploring this inner life of a character and how that affects other people around them. And not to say that that's contrary to other filmmakers, because Sergio Martino and his work with Edwidge Fenech, those films very much do the same thing. And I think that what draws me to specific types of giallos is this interest in showing the experience that women were having at this time with their friends, with their relationships, and showing them as someone who's trying to solve a problem that they may or may not be able to get out of. And there's something really fascinating about that. And knowing that these films were made all in the early 70s, and while the giallo craze lasted until the 80s, the real heart of it, and it's hard to truly express how incredibly insatiable the audience was for these films. They were made so fast, with so many people were making them, that they kept running out of ideas, and they kept pushing the boundaries further and further and became more sleazy and more slashy and all this shit. But the ones that I'm really interested in are the ones that are no, we're going to kind of slow down and we'll focus on these main characters and see what they want and see what people want of them.
That's so interesting you bring that up, because you're right. Our lead character, Nicole, is a really interesting character. So she's a stripper. She's in a committed relationship. She's the breadwinner. She's with a person who cannot find a job. She is a Parisian, living in Paris. And when when she finds out that she's being stalked and abused, at first she's getting stalked and she's like, I can handle this. And I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, the stalking is just phone calls, creepy phone calls.
She's obviously dealing with this all the time because of her career. But when it becomes escalated, she gets herself out of the situation, or so she thinks. And this is interesting. She's a very powerful character. She's very strong. She knows who she is. She knows what she wants. She's very sexually liberated. She understands her own body. She understands her own limitations. She's having a blast. And I think that's really exciting as a female character. You don't often get that, and you certainly don't get that much today.
No.
You don't have a lot of sexually liberated, very comfortable with their body, female characters that are in control of their situation, but are also being showcased as being like, living in an actual world, let me say.
Yeah.
Like not living in a superhero world, but living in a regular world where if you're a stripper, people are going to stalk you. They're going to show up in your changing room when you're trying to change. They're going to come after you. They're going to film you without your consent. They're going to do all kinds of things. And I like that they showcase that. I think that's one of the things I really like about shallow films is that they're often actually talking about what's going on in the real world, almost as a documentation of the experience of being fill in the blank.
Yeah, there's a lot of toxicity that surrounds her life. I want to keep talking about Nicole because I find her really a fascinating character. And she and Nieves Navarro, the star, are really stars in this film. Correct. Because the first half of the film is just her. Like, it's her story, the people she meets, her shitty boyfriend, Michel Amont, who is just like, he's played by this actor, Simone Andreu, who I love. This guy shows up in a ton of giallos. He's in this really great sapphic vampire film, The Blood Spattered Bride.
Yeah, he's a wonderful actor.
He's a Spanish actor. He's fucking phenomenal. He still works today.
Does he?
Yep, he's still working today.
Oh.
He's been in, I think, last I checked was like 225 different films.
You're kidding.
And he's played all sorts of scumbags. He's played... he was in this film by Elio de Iglesias, who made these queer films in Spain right after General Franco died that started breaking down the boundaries of what you could actually show and tell about queer lives, especially gay men lives in Spain. And so he's had this really long and varied career, and he shows up in a bunch of these giallos as this absolute shitburger.
Yeah.
And I fucking love him so much. He's one of those guys that you kind of want to punch in the face and then have a hug with.
Yeah.
You're just like, I love this dude.
He's great. He's great being a fuckboy.
Yeah. Let me jump back for a second. So the film starts off with a man on a train getting killed by another man who's wearing a mask in which you can only see his piercing blue eyes. Later in the film, that same guy with the piercing blue eyes and the mask shows up at Nicole's apartment after Michelle has left, and he threatens to cut her up in a really graphically horrific scene. Like, no blood is shed, but it is fucking awful. And then she runs to Michelle's apartment because she's scared, and she finds in his apartment blue contacts in his medicine cabinet. And so she flees to the arms of this other doctor who has been stalking her at her place of employment.
For the last 24 hours. It's a new stalking, but yeah.
New stalking. The best kind of stalking.
Well,
it's
new.
Still fresh.
You don't know.
Yeah.
Anything could happen. They might just be misunderstood.
Yeah. This guy's stalking the doctor, Dr. Matthews, and he's played by this wonderful actor, Frank Wolf, who was also phenomenal. Like, I adore him in a bunch.
Phenomenal scumbag.
A phenomenal scumbag.
This film brought to you by phenomenal scumbags.
So his view of stalking is not limited to just filming her dance without her consent with a Super 8 camera. Mind you, this is, again, the 1970s, so he has a huge fucking Super 8 camera that he's sitting in a strip club just filming her.
Very subtle.
Yeah, subtle. And also just showing up in her changing room with all the lights out.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting on a couch waiting for her to arrive.
She's very cool about it when she turns on the lights and realizes he's behind her, because she's trying to make sure she doesn't get killed. But here's the thing. Don't be cool about it. Punch him in the face and the balls.
But that's also speaks, like, one, I agree with you. two, that also speaks to her character, right? Like throughout the film, she is consistently presented with these horrific things that she takes not lightly, but it doesn't seem to rattle her. Like the first scene that we see her in, she's at a police office. The police inspector is grilling her about about her father's involvement in this jewel robbery, and she is so laissez-faire about it. It's like she's done it a million times. She knows how to deal with these people. Like she has just this air of confidence that comes with experience, and so she handles the doctor the same way in her hotel or in her changing room. She deals to some degree with the creepy stalker who calls her with the same sort of thing. It isn't until she's actually confronted with that creepy stalker, the knife-wielding, blue-eyed motherfucker, that she actually starts to get scared and runs off to Dr. Matthews' arms, who takes her to England.
Yes. Well, it's obvious that she gets threatened a lot. It's obvious that she has to deal with toxic masculinity on a regular basis, and is not threatened by it in general because she has a sense of how to protect herself.
Yeah.
Until there's just no more chance for her to protect herself. She's put into such a bad place.
Yeah. So she goes to England and stays at a cottage of his in a small town with him, coming in and out because he still works as an eye doctor in London. I think that Gastaldi, the writer, does a really interesting job of being like, hey, so there's contacts and this guy's an eye doctor. Who's the killer?
That's true. And I'm embarrassed to say I hadn't thought about it until you said that.
That
is a pretty direct wah wah.
Like, who would have access to blue contacts or creating them?
You know, speaking of that, it was interesting because I thought for a while, like, how does this guy know anything about this situation? Like, how does he know who her father is? How does he know any of this stuff? And then, because he's a doctor, and I was like, oh, it's because the assistant or the partner to her father comes in and gets his eyes done, and then he learns about it that way, and so he's going to steal the diamonds because this other guy is still blind. And then you find out, nope, he actually has always been partners with this guy. And I find that really interesting, that there were a lot of breadcrumbs that could lead to, oh, this would make sense. Oh, this would make sense. Oh, this would make sense. And yet it's just even more simple than that. He's just the partner to the father.
Yeah, if the core element is to make sense of it all, like the film does that really well, to be like, no, there's all these steps, there's all these things that are just laid out for you to experience. If you pay attention just to those things, you should be able to figure this out along with everybody, because obviously they're going to be withholding because of narrative structure and whatnot. But like for the most part, it all makes cognitive or cohesive sense as it moves forward.
But that I never thought that the eye doctor would have the blue contacts. I am shamed.
So she goes there, and she goes to the cottage, and she's spending her nights alone, being peered at through a looking glass from this old guy who used to be a part of the Navy. I think his name is Smith or something of that nature. Who's an older man who's just creeping on her, watching her lounge about in her negligee and writhe around on the ground and do all sorts of what he assumes is sexy acts for him. And he oversees one night a person show up, throw money at Nicole, and then leave. We find out later that that person was Dr. Matthews' wife, and that Nicole has been pretending to be Dr. Matthews' wife in the cottage town. I find it interesting also that Dr. Matthews has a fucking type. Like,
I mean, yeah, he does.
Like his wife and Nicole look the same.
Would you suggest potentially that he developed the type for Nicole because of Nicole, being that he's been working with the father? And then the second best thing he could get was this other woman who happened to be very wealthy. Because we don't know when in his timeline he became partners with their father.
I don't know.
It just could be interesting that you could even play that angle, that he's always had a crush on Nicole.
I get the sense while watching it that he's never seen Nicole before. By his actions and when he attacks her at her apartment, instead of slicing her and killing her, that like he did her father, that in that moment he stops himself from using the blade side of the knife on her chest and instead the back side of the knife on her chest, and only threatening to do her harm because he was recognizing how much she resembled the type that he has.
But he would have seen that back in the changing room.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Because he's already filmed her and watched her. I understand that in the first striptease he might not know, but in the second one he might not know. But when he was in the changing room, he would definitely see that she looked like his wife.
Yeah, I can see that too. I just it's something to
there's just a lot of nuggets there to pull from. I would like to take a moment to discuss the first striptease.
Okay.
And say that, oof,
yeah,
it doesn't age well. In fact, it's wildly inappropriate and offensive.
Yeah, she's in blackface.
So prepare yourself. But what we talked about earlier is that obviously most of cinema doesn't age well with contemporary thinking, and that's appropriate. We should be all evolving. Our culture should be getting better. And I think that the best way, we both discussed, how do you watch something that's really fucking offensive? And I think the key to it is to say it's the receipts. We have to look back on our culture and say, these are the receipts to prove the truth of the culture, the truth of the time, the truth of the perspective, the truth of what everybody sees. I mean, you go back to cinema from the 30s and no one is black in most of Hollywood cinema, except for maybe the maid.
Or the porter.
Or somebody that's performing, and it's fucking awful.
Yeah.
But then we go, these are the receipts. This is proof. This is what the cultural norm was. We don't like it. We don't appreciate it. We do not support it. And so we're just saying we see it, we acknowledge it, we don't appreciate it, but we understand that this is what the culture was at the time.
Yeah.
And so now we can critique it.
Yeah.
Because we can say, hey, we can see this was the truth of this moment in time. And this is sort of the documentation of the perspective, or what was acceptable or what wasn't acceptable, but was acceptable enough to still film.
Yeah. It's important to see these things and be shocked and be unnerved by them, in the same way that like reading Tom Sawyer and seeing how liberal Mark Twain is with the N-word and feeling that isn't appropriate. But it also describes the character and describes the time really well. And so it allows you to reflect on where you are in relationship to what it is. Like it's the
spurs a conversation,
and it's also the Oliver S.E.S. quote that you love.
Oh yeah, text is an object. It changes perspective depending on where you're standing.
And that's this. Like we can look at this moment where Nicole is dancing in a striptease in blackface and be, this is horrendous. But it also speaks to where people were in the 1970s, where, and even if we burrow down, where a strip club would be, what kind of acts it was going to book, what kind of exoticism it was going to deal with, how it was going to fetishize the people who were performing. And we can reflect upon those elements of this scene and see where we're different now and where we're not. And that's important.
Yeah, and where we still need to go and what we still need to be talking about. Yeah. So it's really hard to talk about old cinema and deal with a lot of the things that don't age well.
Yeah.
It's tough. But I think it's important to acknowledge, and it's important for us to build a conversation. So tell us what you think.
There's also the character in the small town that Nicole is staying in a scene near the end, right before we see who the killer is, who dresses himself up in Nicole's clothes and dances around the cottage. I don't think the film is celebrating his queerness. Mm-mm. He calls it a vice, in fact.
Yeah,
the character calls it a vice.
It's definitely transphobic,
homophobic. But even the police officer, who is truly a buffoon, is just says to him, instead of saying anything off-putting or derogatory, he just says change. Which I do appreciate that there is some language around that, not as much as I wish, and I wish that it wasn't presented as, again,
a negative.
Yeah.
Because he looked so pretty in his dress. He looked so cute. And I loved it. But this is just the reality. When you're exploring older art forms, there's a lot of things in there you're not going to like.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. It's, as Godard always says, if you want to critique a film, make your own.
Yeah.
So if you find things offensive in old cinema, great. Pull out your pen, start writing a script. Like, let's pull together. Let's all work together and make another film, because I think there's so much room for improvement. But I also like that there is at least a glimpse of queerness in this. This giallo isn't queer centric at all. There's no queerness in it really, hardly at all, except for the one character. I'm excited to talk about other films where there are.
Yeah.
But in this instance, this is just that one moment.
And contrary to a lot of the films that we mentioned off the top, I don't think that there's a scene where two women talk to each other.
Oh my gosh, there isn't. Well, the two wives.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes.
For one brief second.
Yes. And they are truly talking about the relationship that they're having with a man.
It does not pass the Bechdel test.
Yeah. Well, we've talked mostly about the first 50 minutes of the film. And truly here is where the biggest spoiler of this film takes place. But we warned you, there are always going to be fucking spoilers. Mm-hmm. So at about the 45, 50-minute mark, our main character, Nicole, is killed. And the film changes tone from that point forward to be a kind of bumbling cop comedy that starts off with this incredible scene where our lead detective, named Inspector Baxter, tries to drink his coffee, but keeps getting interrupted by people coming in, and he never actually, throughout the rest of the film, drinks a coffee on screen. I assume he drinks one off, but he always gets interrupted when he's trying to drink a cup of coffee.
It's very Buñuel.
And it sets the tone for how the film is going to be moving forward with these two kind of idiot cops who are slowly solving the crime, but not being that successful at any point.
Correct. It is a very jarring shift, but it works because it actually feels like you're starting a second film. Mm-hmm. Like it's the miniseries.
Yeah.
And this is the next episode, and this episode is comedy.
Yeah.
It really works. It's funny. It shouldn't work, but it does, because once we lose our lead, Nicole, the whole film is, as you said last night when we were watching it, it took all these other men to try to fill in the hole of the loss of Nicole. And it still can't. It's still all about her. Yeah. Like, she's such a captivating lead as an actor. She's so captivating. She's an excellent star. Mm-hmm. And as soon as she's gone, you feel it for the whole rest of the film.
It takes basically 6 characters to fill the hole that Nicole leaves in the film.
Yeah.
And it does a really good job filling it with all these other people doing all these different things. But it highlights how important Nicole and Nieves Navarro are to this film, that you can't just replace her. Mm-mm. Like, she's so important to the narrative, and her performance is so, as you said, captivating that it's that her disappearance leaves a gaping fucking hole.
It is interesting because, honestly, whenever I think about this movie, and even last night, I was surprised. We've seen it I don't know how many times. I completely forget about the third act. Mm-hmm. I only think of her. Mm-hmm. And when she's gone, I'm like, wait, what? What just happened? Yep. Even though I've seen this before, I'm like completely surprised that there's this whole other film that's going to happen.
And the film smartly sprinkles in a couple of things where it's like, oh, we're going to do a flashback. So you get another scene with her. Here's another flashback where she's seen from this perspective. And so you get little moments, but that only highlights really how much we miss her as a driving force. And again, she has to be this captivating for the rest of the film to work, because while we find out that Dr. Matthews was working with her father and this blind jewel thief to perpetrate a crime, that doesn't really fucking matter.
Nobody cares.
I don't really care at all.
We only care about Nicole.
Yeah. And I think that the film almost also agrees with us in some way of being like, no, these cops are going to be fucking morons, and we're just going to kind of deal with them for the rest of the time, and they're going to be fine, but they're not, we have to have a different tone. We can't move forward with the same sort of impetus.
No, now it's a buddy cop.
Yeah. It's Inspector Baxter and Bergson.
Oh yeah,
Bergson. He's so adorable. He's I love.
He's really dopey.
Yeah, I love Bergson mostly because he keeps trying to hit on Peggy who runs the local bar, who has the best haircut.
She does have a great haircut.
Yeah, she has a fabulous haircut.
See, okay, this is another reason to watch the movie, because you want to see the costumes, you want to see the hairstyles, you want to see the incredible outfits they're wearing. There's this great sequence with Nicole and her sugar daddy, where Dr. Matthews is buying her all these amazing outfits, and she's trying them on for him, but it's like he doesn't even matter. She's just like, I'm just here because you're gonna pay for them, but I'm trying these on for me.
Yeah.
And she has these fantastic outfits. She's having so much fun. She has all these wig changes. There's a lot of wig changes that are happening in here. I think it's just fun, you know? I feel like style really hasn't changed in American culture for like 20 years, even longer. And so it's fun to go back to the 70s and see what kind of fun shit people were wearing.
I feel like the other element of that is that works really well with that kind of fun clothing style is the really jazzy and jaunty score.
Oh, the music is awesome.
Like it's like you can see why people like Quentin Tarantino was like, hey, I'm just going to steal all this shit for mine because it's really evocative of a time, but it's also really fun. Like all these scores from these giallos, this era of cinema is just exceptionally interesting. Like Ennio Morricone does a whole bunch of scores. And this film is done by Stefano Caprini and Nora Orlani. I think I said the first guy's name right. I may not have.
Nora is the voice you're going to hear. She does all the vocal instrumentals, for lack of a better term. She's wonderful. She has a beautiful voice, and you can definitely see where Tarantino stole everything from because he steals
Everything. But it is so evocative and so, again, of a time and place. The film feels exactly of the time and place that it was made.
It is very 70s, and it is very high energy. The music is very high energy, and the music is very 70s. And I like that. I like that it does feel like a moment. I think it's really important. I think there's something to be said for like immersing yourself in an era and really vibing off of it versus, and I think that's what I like about giallo films in general is there's something low budget about it. There's something where you often see shots are out of focus. You can tell that they didn't have a huge budget to pull from to create sets. So they're in actual locations, which is of course part of the point of it because they're using funding from different countries so that you could showcase actual places. So it's really a small town in England. It very much looks like the coast in England. It isn't some studio set. And I appreciate that because I really feel like there's something missing when you watch only cinema that is made on a lot because none of it feels real. Nothing feels authentic. Nothing feels lived in. I know with our own art, we make our films exclusively in actual existing places, in actual existing businesses, because you cannot quite tell a story the same with a fake set as you can with a real place.
Yeah, lived in places look lived in.
You can't make that up.
Yeah, I would like to just move back to a second to the buddy cop comedy aspect of the second half of the film. Because I want to also point out that unlike a lot of films that we are presented nowadays, especially with kind of the Sherlock Holmes version of every sleuth where the cops are so smart, they're the
brilliant.
Best. These cops are morons.
Yes, this is authentic.
They're adorable morons. That might not be authentic, but they're kind of adorable morons. And what I had to say is Michel Amont's detective work outshines a lot of the detective work that the actual detectives do.
He crushes it.
Like, he might be an absolute shitburger, but when it comes to trying to solve what the fuck happened, he's on it.
He's focused.
And he might be just after the money because almost everybody is always after the money. That's why they call it money. So he might just be focused on that aspect of it, but he's hyper focused and he solves so many elements of what's going on. And you're just like, what is going on with these cops? Why are they playing second fiddle to a man who apparently can't get a job and is consistently viewed as a pimp for Nicole?
It is interesting you bring that up because he is wonderful. And so he is the reason the crime is solved.
Yeah, he's a reason. He solves the crime. He captures or subdues the killer in the end, and he gets the shit beat out of him.
Yeah, he does.
Absolute shit beat out of him.
But he does steal the cop car, so we're super proud of him.
And then he just waves at them like, hey guys, I'll see you soon.
Yeah, no, he's great.
Like, they got his passport, he got their car. It's a fucking trade, man.
He's great. It's a great character.
Yeah, he's having so much fun. I think that's the other element of the second half of the film is he and the cops are having so much fun in their performance.
The actors are having a good time.
Like that Simon Andreu is having such a blast playing the shitburger. I think that Frank Wolf is having a blast playing
definitely
playing the shitty Dr. Matthews. Like, I think that there's so much fun in the performance of these by these actors as they play these parts throughout the end that it also infuses you with kind of like, oh, this is going to be fun because they're having fun. Like, I love that the first thing that we see after Nicole is found dead is the police officer, the head police officer, Inspector Baxter, is looking at boots that Dr. Matthews bought. And Dr. Matthews only bought them because they are the exact same boots he bought his wife, so that his wife and his mistress could be wearing the exact same outfit.
Which he said it's because he liked it.
Yes. And maybe it's just because he's dim and he's afraid of like mistaking them. He's like, this way I don't have to mistake them. They're just the same person. Anyway.
Could be. I think it's just his kink. But yeah, maybe he's that dumb.
Yeah. I prefer to think of him dumb, but kink is maybe probably the right thing. And then the second thing that the police officer does is he walks over to this kind of fishbowl green vase thing, and he finds this packet that's this long.
It's a necklace.
No, it's something that is hiding the diamonds.
No, but it was her jewelry that's hiding the diamonds. So it was her necklace or her earrings and stuff.
Yeah, and he holds it up like at the 50-minute mark, and we still have an hour left of the film, and they've solved where the diamonds are. He doesn't know it. Nobody knows it, and they show it to the audience, and then he puts it back away, and we forget about it. And it's almost like the Gastaldi and Ercole are going, here's the solve, and now we're going to go on this other thing.
Perhaps you didn't notice, but in the very first scene, Nicole is wearing the necklace that is hiding the diamonds to the police station.
I was wondering that.
She's wearing it at the very beginning of the film, and they're in the car, and they're driving to the police station. And then she goes to the police station. She's got it on. It's like a choker, but it's full of diamonds. And it's just such a badass move on her part to be like, I have no idea what the diamonds are. And she's sitting there wearing them.
And also a badass move. No one in her circle knows. No. Her boyfriend doesn't know. Like, her lover doesn't know. No one knows that she actually has them. She keeps telling people she doesn't know where they are.
Yeah.
So she's holding out because she is smart.
She knows she's going to survive.
Yeah.
Well, she hopes she's going to survive.
Like, she knows that that's her nest egg out. Because if her father is dead, then...
Which she doesn't know.
She doesn't know until later, until she is told by the mistress or by the wife, I think, that her father is dead.
He's just missing. They don't realize he's dead. Is that right?
Well, the cops tell us that he's dead, and we saw that he's dead.
We know, but I didn't know if she knew.
But I'll say that it's unclear. I'm not sure.
I don't remember.
But nonetheless, the film shows you all these things. It's one of the things that, again, getting back to Castaldi's structure of this, the film shows you all these things. It tells you that these things are present within the film. You just have to be there with it to understand what it is. And that if you're paying attention and you're inquisitive about just that aspect of the plot, it'll make itself apparent to you.
Definitely worth more than one watch.
The only other thing that I think is really interesting about the film is that, like we touched on it earlier about the cops not being like Sherlock Holmes. Everybody has normal jobs.
Yeah.
She's a striptease artist, which is what Dr. Matthews calls her, which I find is it feels like an empowering version of just a stripper.
Though I will say her dances, nobody choreographed it.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure that they're sexy.
They just didn't have it in the funding to hire a choreographer, and she just went with it, and she was bad at it.
Yeah. She tried. But so we have a striptease artist. We have an eye doctor. We have a fisherman who plays a major role in the solving of the crime. We have a layabout / pimp. We have cops. We have peeping toms.
We have the bartender.
And we also have Dr. Matthews' wife, who I'm not sure what she does, but she has a lot of money.
I think she is is wealthy. It's just independently wealthy.
Which is also, again, a woman with all the money. Like, it's incredibly progressive to be like, these women have money and have means and have control of their own bodies and their own identities.
Yeah, women do.
Right.
The men just want to take it away.
Yeah, which I think that's also part of the point of the film, that the men continually, yeah, it does. That they continually want to take what the women have. and not give them anything in return or not have fair value or equal life.
Or do any work.
I just find it really interesting in this world in which the cinematic world that we find ourselves now living in, that we have so many people who are the best at shit. And this film is not interested in people being the best at anything. They're just doing jobs and living their life with the best they can.
I know. I am so bored by the most brilliant fill in the blank. It's just, come on. Why does everybody have to be exceptional? Can we not just tell stories about average people living average lives? Because I think there's something really beautiful in that and magical within the mundane.
I think about all the lives that are the best that we keep seeing, like the Jack Reachers or the superheroes and whatnot. And every single one of them seems fucking miserable.
Yeah.
So if being the best means you're also the best at being miserable, maybe that's not to be strived for.
Right? Also asexual as hell.
Yes. Maybe the best is being asexual.
Yeah. And not in like a fun way, in a boring way.
Yeah. In a I didn't understand this sort of way.
Yeah, I don't know the sound. They don't understand the assignment. It's interesting. No, it's a great point because, I mean, we do as a culture in general right now over glamorize exceptional to the point where everybody thinks they're exceptional and everyone thinks they're special and everybody's living their fake Instagram curated life. And it's deeply boring.
Yeah.
Because it just is.
Yeah.
There's something really lovely about just living a regular life, and that having the opportunity to do that in general should be seen as exceptional. If you get to live a regular boring life, you've had an exceptional life.
Yeah. Every life is exceptional.
It's just, we're over glamorizing celebrity culture, but ain't nothing new about that.
No. Emily, is there anything you want to recommend to stumble upon next?
Yeah, there's a couple things that we have been devouring that have been a lot of fun lately. The first is Slow Horses on Apple TV. If you have an opportunity to watch it, it's 3 seasons deep right now. It's starring Gary Oldman and Kristen Scott Thomas and a bunch of other actors that are fabulous. It is a spy show for MI5 where the focus is the rejects.
Yeah.
Slow Horses are the MI5 agents who have fucked up royally and are kind of a disaster.
They're not racehorses.
No, they're not racehorses. But they are still somehow get involved in trying to solve certain issues that pop up in London. So you get a lot of chances to wander around London with these characters. Gary Oldman is brilliant as Jackson Lamb. It's written by one of the writers from Veep, but it's not a comedy. It is, James Bondy, but if your James Bond is a fuck up.
Yeah.
And I like it a lot. It's really good. It's authentic. It's heartfelt. And again, here we go back to this idea of regular people being kind of shit at their lives and getting to let that be enough. And this is definitely that. So Slow Horses, you should definitely check out. The other thing we watched recently was Murder at the End of the World, which is the opposite of what I just said. Also a crime, but it's very unsettling. It's very, I don't know, it'll make you uncomfortable. It definitely is an exploration of what happens when we let the billionaires have too much power. The last 2 episodes completely stick the landing. I really struggled with the first couple, so if you find yourself doing the same, but you want to stick it out, it's worth it. I really liked it though, Murder at the End of the World with Clive Owen, and it was made by the creators of
The OA.
The OA, and then
Another Earth.
Another Earth. It's made by the creators of Another Earth. So definitely worth it if you like things that are a little unsettling. And also it takes place in Iceland, which is really fun because we were just there. So it's kind of neat to see.
Yeah.
Austin, is there anything you would recommend to stumble upon next?
I would like to recommend a movie called Ride with the Devil, which is an old Ang Lee film that stars Jeffrey Wright and Tobey Maguire and Skeet Ulrich and Jewel. It's a Civil War story. It takes place in the South and on the borderlands in near Kansas. It tells its main thrust is really fascinating because it tells a story of Southern fighters who are friends. One of them is a friend to his ex-slave, who's played by Jeffrey Wright, and the film is a fascinating conversation about what happened at the end of the Civil War, and in that kind of relationship between a white man, an African-American man. And it's one of the few films that I can ever think of in which the end of the film is a black man on a horse riding into the sunset to find happiness. And it's an interesting discussion of American history that isn't really told. If you know of the University of Kansas and know of Jayhawks, the Jayhawking experience is expressed in the film. There's a whole bunch of history to America that matters to how our culture has kind of evolved to today that is touched upon in the film. It's just a really lovely film. Ang Lee makes great films. It's something that I think that everybody should see at some point in their life. And Jewel, musician, is actually really fucking fabulous in it, and it's surprising to me that she didn't get more work.
So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
It was really fun talking about the Giallo film, Death Walks on High Heels. It was really fun discussing it. We hope you enjoyed it. Please follow and subscribe to our many channels. We are at Fishtown Films on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I mean, nobody uses Twitter anymore, but we're there.
We're there. We're also on Facebook, but that's gauche.
Oh, I haven't been on Facebook in years, so don't message us there.
Yeah.
If you want to get in touch with us, Instagram is the best way to direct message. We are regularly posting film recommendations now on all the platforms, so follow along and we'll see what we're going to recommend next. We will also be posting what the next film will be that we'll be watching and discussing on the podcast sometime in the middle of next month, so definitely check in. We'll put it up on Instagram and TikTok. We really enjoyed talking about this with you today.
And if you feel like supporting us, rent our film on Amazon.
Yes, Citywide is now available streaming on Amazon. Please rent or purchase, have a fun movie night, invite all your friends over, watch it a million times. We're really proud of the work, and every dollar that you spend on supporting our film will go to the next Sapphic Indie.
Thank you very much.
Bye.